The tires crunched on frost-dusted gravel as Mason Parker's weathered pickup truck crawled down the long, winding driveway. Thin wisps of December snow drifted across the Oregon countryside, painting the landscape in muted shades of white and gray. Mason's calloused hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the only outward sign of the storm raging inside him. 5-year-old Emma sat bundled in the passenger seat, her small face pressed against the window, breath creating little clouds on the cold glass. $15,000. His entire world had been distilled down to that number. $15,000 for this abandoned farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. $15,000 left from a life that once included a 7-figure construction company, a waterfront home in Seattle's exclusive Madison Park neighborhood, and a future that had seemed bulletproof. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hoppy, the sole surviving treasure from their previous life. The toy's once white fur had grayed with love and time, one ear, slightly unstitched, held together with Mason's clumsy attempts at repair. He'd sold everything else during those desperate months after Rachel died. Everything except Mr. Hoppy. The farmhouse emerged from behind a cluster of weathered oak trees, 2 stories of faded white clapboard, a sagging porch and overgrown bushes pressing against peeling window frames. Not exactly the dream home he'd promised his daughter. Emma's eyes widened with childish hope. "Is that it, Daddy? Is that our new house?" Mason's throat tightened. The last time he'd seen this level of excitement in her eyes was before the hospital calls, before the funeral, before the foreclosure notices. "That's it, sweetheart. That's our new beginning." The words felt hollow, but he forced a smile. What else could he do? His mind drifted back to the day that had marked the beginning of the end. 10 months ago, a perfect Sunday morning. Rachel making pancakes shaped like animals while he sipped coffee at their kitchen island, surrounded by Italian marble and designer appliances, their phones ringing simultaneously with the hospital's caller ID. Rachel collapsing in their sunroom just 20 minutes later, the aneurysm in her brain a silent assassin that had been waiting to strike. The doctor said it was quick, that she hadn't suffered. As if that somehow made it better. The construction company, Parker Restoration, had been his pride, 12 years of sweat and sacrifice built from the ground up. Specialized in historical restorations across the Pacific Northwest, featured in architectural magazines, courted by wealthy clients with more money than taste. None of it had mattered after Rachel died. Deadlines missed, contracts unfulfilled, employees unpaid. The business had collapsed as surely as his heart had. Mason blinked, forcing himself back to the present. The truck rounded the final bend in the driveway. He slowed, an unfamiliar sensation prickling at the back of his neck. Something was wrong. Smoke. There was smoke rising from the chimney of the supposedly abandoned farmhouse. Mason's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. His stomach clenched with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Someone was inside his house. The house that represented his last chance, his final attempt to build something from the wreckage of his life. He pulled the truck to a stop 30 feet from the front door. "Emma, stay here for a minute, okay? I need to check something." Emma nodded, already distracted by Mr. Hoppy, whispering something into the rabbit's tattered ear. Mason stepped out of the truck, the cold air biting at his face. The scent of wood smoke hung in the air, undeniable evidence that someone had made themselves at home in the property he'd emptied his bank account to purchase. 6 weeks ago, he'd driven out here for a rushed inspection before the online auction closed. The place had been empty then, dusty and neglected, but structurally sound enough to save with his expertise. The real estate agent had mentioned it had been abandoned for years after the previous owner died without heirs. Perfect for a desperate man with a young daughter and nowhere else to go. Mason approached the front door cautiously, years of construction, site awareness, making him mindful of loose boards and unstable steps. The porch creaked beneath his weight, announcing his presence to whoever was inside. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open slowly, muscles tensed for confrontation. The scene inside stopped him cold. The main room had been swept clean, free of the dust and debris he'd seen during his inspection. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace he'd been certain would need a complete rebuild before it was safe to use. But what truly froze him in place were the 2 young women standing in the center of the room, Identical expressions of terror in their nearly identical faces. Twins. They had to be twins. Same delicate build, same long blonde hair pulled back in practical ponytails, same wide blue eyes now filled with unmistakable fear. They couldn't have been older than 25. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the gentle pop and hiss of the fire. Then one of the young women stepped forward, hands raised as if to ward off a blow. Please, please don't call the police. We'll leave right now. We just needed somewhere. Her voice cracked, betraying a deeper desperation than her composed face suggested. Mason found his voice. Who are you? The words came out harder than he intended, fueled by the shock and the complicated emotions of the past 10 months. The other twin moved protectively in front of her sister. We're sorry. We thought this place was abandoned. We've been here for a few weeks. We haven't damaged anything, I swear. Her words tumbled out rapidly, practiced, as if she'd rehearsed this explanation. We'll pack up and go. Just please don't call the cops. Mason's gaze swept the room more carefully. Despite their trespassing, they'd treated the place with unexpected care. The floor had been swept clean. The broken windows he remembered were now covered with cardboard and plastic, sealed tight against the December cold. The fireplace wasn't just functional, it had been properly cleaned and made safe. This wasn't the work of vandals or partiers. How did you even know about this house? Mason asked, his tone softening slightly despite himself. The first twin, the one who had spoken initially, wrapped her arms around herself. Up close, she looked exhausted, with dark circles beneath her eyes and a thinness that spoke of missed meals. We used to live in Riverdale, about 15 miles from here. Everyone knew this place had been empty for years. We didn't think anyone would... She paused, swallowing hard. We didn't know someone bought it. Daddy? All three adults turned. Emma stood in the doorway, clutching Mr. Hoppy, her brown curls wild around her face after escaping her hat. She looked at the two women with curious eyes rather than fear. Emma, I told you to stay in the truck. Mason moved toward her instinctively, protective father mode overriding everything else. I know, but it's really cold, and I saw the smoke. Emma stepped further into the room, drawn by the warmth of the fire. Her head tilted as she studied the twins. Are these ladies going to live with us? The innocent question hung in the air, unanswerable, a child's simple curiosity cutting through the tension of the adult world. No, sweetheart, we're leaving. The second twin spoke quickly, her voice gentle when addressing Emma. We're really sorry. We'll be gone in 10 minutes. But Emma had already walked further into the room, her small hand reaching out to feel the fire's warmth. It's nice in here, much better than the motel. She looked up at her father with the directness only children possess. Can they show us how they made the fire work? You said the fireplace was broken. Mason felt something shift inside his chest as he looked at his daughter. This little girl who had watched her mother being lowered into the ground, who had slept in a cramped motel room for weeks, who had stood silently as their possessions were sold one by one. Here she was, still capable of simple, uncomplicated kindness. He turned back to the twins, really looking at them now. Beyond the fear in their eyes was something deeper, something he recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. The kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from having nowhere to go, no safety net, no plan B. Sit down, he said quietly, gesturing to the makeshift seats they had arranged around the fire. The twins exchanged uncertain glances. Please, Mason added. Just sit. Let's figure this out. 20 minutes later, they were all seated around the fire. Emma had curled up against Mason's side, fighting sleep but determined to stay awake for whatever happened next. The twins sat across from them, perched on the edge of a wooden crate like birds ready to take flight at the first sign of danger. I'm Haley, the first twin said softly. This is my sister, Olivia. We're twins, obviously. Obviously, Emma murmured sleepily. Despite everything, Haley's lips curved into a small smile. I'm Mason. This is Emma. He paused, searching for the right words. Tell me how you ended up here. The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication that seemed unique to siblings who shared DNA and life experiences in equal measure. Then Olivia spoke, her voice steadier than her sister's, though her hands remained clasped tightly in her lap. We grew up in Riverdale, just the three of us, me, Haley, and our mom, Sandra. Dad left when we were babies. Mom raised us alone, worked 2 jobs most of our lives. Olivia's gaze